Welcome to a brand new episode of the Totally Indian Football Show with me, your host Suju. And today I have once again a gentleman who I've connected over LinkedIn. He's now translated into my guest on the show. I think I would love to continue these series of connecting with people there and then getting them directly on the show to get to know a bit more about them. So I have with me Amit Gadkari. He's the founder and chief thinker of Nudge Sports and Nudge Sports Consulting. Now I also had to nudge him, I think, more than once to kind of get him going with the conversation. But so, what does Nudge Sports do is mainly into focuses. Now, I'm going to read out a few sentences that you have written on your website.
Sure.
Just a few highlight for our audience. It basically what it does is they focus on mental well-being of athletes, govern their mental state and psychological balance to consistently perform at the highest level. They also make mental conditioning an integral part of the athlete's overall training program. Firstly, Mr. Gadkari, thank you so much for coming onto the show. And once again, I have to tell my listeners that we are doing this in person. He is in the studio with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Siju, and pleasure to chat with you. It's always nice when someone wants to know more about mental conditioning amongst athletes, when their mental wellness, whether it's just their well-being or performance. So it's lovely to come here and chat with you.
Yeah, I think let's start with a bit about you. I also got to know that you've played enough cricket and badminton age group for Bombay, and that's how probably even your liking towards sports and also understanding towards the psyche of a player and what goes into an athlete probably triggered you to start this. But just take us through you and about you a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did play a bit of sports. I can proudly say that I played against Sachin Tendulkar and we were at the receiving end most of the time. Did play a bit of cricket for Mumbai under 15, under 19. And that stayed with me. I mean, sports, and I think it's with most Indians. We are all passionate, whatever level of sport we play, whatever kind of sport we play. We are always passionate about sports. And that stayed with me through my corporate career. I spent a good 26 odd years in the corporate world. And I always knew that the moment I quit my corporate life and I do something on my own, it had to be in the field of sports. And one of the main triggers for me was I started playing the sport again after I turned 50 about 3 years ago. And we started working with a foundation. We set up a foundation called Cricketers Foundation to help, the retired folks of Mumbai cricket with financial assistance. And that is a time when we realized, and that was the time of the pandemic, when we realized that the age level boys and girls of Mumbai cricket were not getting enough attention towards their mental health. I started studying the market and I realized that there was a huge gap.
Yeah.
And that led to the creation of Nut Sports.
Right. I think now getting into the whole big picture, when you set up the foundation, the Cricketers Foundation, right? How often is it that some of them at that are probably at your age, at your level, even for when Sachin started? As I was talking to my team, before the recording, mental health is still a taboo, right? We still talk
Absolutely.
about
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
but there are athletes coming around speaking, but it's still considered, oh my God, like what just happened to him or her. Back in those days, you really had no clue about this, right? You just had to do because you have to do it, and no one's really talking about this. So when you played age group cricket, and that's even more pressured period, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So how did you kind of maneuver yourself, and did you see these things around you while you were at that age?
You know, when I played age level cricket, that was almost 30, 35 years ago. I mean, we didn't even know what is sports psychology or psychology, right? And we always, I mean, my own experience, I realized that if I had access to good sports psychologist, I could have probably played a couple of levels more. Now, when I sit back and think, hey, I used to be so good in the nets, but when it came to the matches, I used to probably be overcome by fear of failure. And that is one of the key areas that most athletes succumb to. And I could relate to that. I can relate to that very easily now. And that's what we try to help the athletes focus on their performance and focus on their mental wellness with qualified sports psychologists who help them train their mind.
Now, coming to the picture of you have a pool of psychologists, right? Because you're you're working with different athletes from across sports. How do you kind of go about picking the psychologist, or how do you kind of build that team? Because right there, though it's not a sports playing team, but these guys are, you're still building a team to help the athletes. How do you go about doing that?
Absolutely. So I think the first thing is that we work only with qualified sports psychologists. So most of, in fact, I would say all the sports psychologists have a master's in sports psychology. Some of them have a dual degree of clinical psychology or applied psychology and masters in sports psychology. So that's the most important thing, because, and I'll tell you the reason why we look at qualified sports psychologists. So currently we work with almost 70 odd sports psychologists across India. We do work with a few from UK, South Africa, Australia, Southeast Asia, but all of them are qualified. The reason we work with a qualified sports psychologist is that typically athletes have a lot of clinical issues. So it's only a qualified sports psychologist that can see a red flag, whether it's depression, a high level of anxiety, or even suicidal tendencies. This an unqualified sports psychologist may miss out, and it could really have lethal consequences. So we've always been conscious of that. So that's the first bottom line. Even the younger sports psychologists, we ensure that they go through some kind of a mentorship program or an internship with senior sports psychologists so that they can get the kind of experience. So that's the bottom line. Working with qualified sports psychologists. Yeah.
Now, from your journey of, okay, you mentioned when you got back to playing 3 years back and you felt there was a huge gap, you studied the market, you came up with the Cricketers Foundation. But from journey from Cricketers Foundation to Nudge Sports or Nudge Consultancy, how did that come about? And what was that one moment that you felt, no, this is the need of the hour and I need to put my whole heart into it?
So, as I mentioned earlier, the foundation was set up essentially to help the retired folks. But during the pandemic, we realized that Mumbai's under 16, under 19 boys and girls were not getting any training. They were not getting games to play. And at that age, missing out 6 months or a season can really, really be a game changer. Kids are forced to give up the game. So the foundation decided to offer free mental conditioning sessions for about 50 kids. And at that time, I was just kind of saying, okay, let these kids go through the mental conditioning sessions. After the sessions, after about 5 or 6 sessions, when we started interacting with the kids, the reactions of some of the boys, especially the older ones who were 18, 19, and who were almost, they had to take a decision whether to pursue or to stop. They said that, sir, if we had this when we were 13, 14, 15, it would have really helped us. And this was not just one isolated statement. Most of the kids, boys and girls, said this. And that's what got me thinking that, hey, this needs to be converted into a structured program across sports, across all age levels. And that's when I started studying the market. And I realized that in India, while strength and conditioning, fitness, awareness of nutrition, sports nutrition had reached, I would say, global standards, the awareness and the taboo around sports psychology, mental conditioning was still there. And it was more because people were not aware of that. So that's why I'm glad, to be chatting with you here, because through this, we are able to reach out to people and tell them that, hey, mental conditioning is just like you going to the gym and toning yourself up, or you going for a run, building your endurance. So you just train your mind. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. So that foundation's work of doing these mental conditioning sessions with age level kids really was the eye opener, and kind of really nudged me into setting up this venture.
Now, when you mentioned also the age group players, right, from there, we often say that, okay, there's probably when you evolve as an individual into your late 20s and early 30s is when you get better understanding, okay, you know about these things because you're hearing and exposed to that. But when you're probably 8, 9, getting into the whole pressured game and competitive level sports, all they want to do is win, right? That's what the mental psyche is. And as an athlete, as a performer, yes, that's what you want the end result to be. How do you go about approaching the aspect of mental health to that young, that age group? Because their blood is high up there, they just want to win out and they don't want to think about all of these aspects. So how do you kind of approach?
It's tough, but I must say, Siju, that the awareness is increasing. One must really commend the international athletes and even some of our own athletes like a Virat Kohli or a Sachin Tendulkar or anyone else, even the wrestlers, talking about the importance of mental training. So the moment these icons talk about how mental training is important to focus on performance, the youngsters they understand that. We also believe that it's important to start this process at a younger age, when you are 13, 14, 15, right? Because once you are about at that age of 19, 20, you kind of set in your thought process, but that doesn't mean that that thought process cannot be changed. But younger kids are like a sponge, right? They take up things,
Yeah.
they are able to adapt better. So that's why our focus is always on younger kids, 13, 14, and we always tell, and as you mentioned in the beginning, one of the main things of Nut Sports is that we indicate to everyone, the parents, the coaches, that make mental training an integral part of your kids' training program. And it's awareness. It's just educating people. Someone like an Abhinav Bindra is so vocal about it. Someone like Neeraj Chopra himself is vocal about it. Our wrestlers are vocal about it. Cricketers are vocal about it. Even someone like a Lakshya Sen, PV Sindhu, they all talk about it. The moment people, these kind of star performers talk, it makes our life easier. Because we are anyway at the end of the day, we are in the same ecosystem, right? To
Right.
help everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a process. It's a process. Yeah.
And since you mentioned that, yes, it helps of athletes like this to come out and share their story. Do you somewhere or the other also play these videos of them, sharing their experience to their age group? And what has the response been like when you approach? I am just trying to understand, the psyche of that at that age, because they're exposed to so much pressure now. Among the peers, among their what they see around. So what has the response been like?
So I must say the response has been very positive. I mean, the kids today are so much smarter than kids my generation. You're much
Yeah.
younger than me, and social media
Yeah.
has definitely helped them grasp the importance when they see videos. In fact, just before our conversation, I was chatting with a swimmer, 16-year-old swimmer, and we were introducing her to one of my sports psychologists at Nat Sports. And her father was on the line, because anyone below 18, we need to have parental consent
Yes.
as well. So that the dad was there, and the dad said, "Hey, all these years I was waiting for this missing link, the mental training part for my girl who's a swimmer, and she's a very good swimmer. But I think she's reached a stage, and she's 16, right? It's a perfect age
Yeah.
for her to really take up something." And the girl was also so looking forward to working with the sports psychologist. So things are getting better, and I would say that I've been, of course there are some naysayers, but I think they're more an exception now, and that number is just going to dwindle as time goes by.
Right. Now, how does an athlete kind of approach you, or do you only work with individual athletes, or do you also work with academies, whether it be any contact sports like cricket, football? Even the chat among, our show is called Indian Football Show, but it's also a conversation around football as well among the players, among, the fans, and we recently also had Delhi Ali coming out and speaking. I will
Yeah,
come back to that,
yeah.
circle back to probably the hypocrisy of us fans as well. But, all of these things, how do you kind of work? Do you only work with athletes or academies?
It's a combination. We work with a lot of academies. We work with a lot of individual athletes. So it's a combination of both. With academies, the advantage is that it's a structured program. I'll give you an example, if I'm allowed to name a few academies. With the Abhinav Bindra foundation. They have a very, very well structured program, and everyone would think, hey, even I thought, hey, Abhinav Bindra must be a shooting academy. No, it's not just shooting. His foundation provides scholarships to 18 sports. So you have athletes at 5 office centers across Pune, Bangalore, Bhubaneswar, Mohali, Delhi, across these sports, and our team of sports psychologists then they work with these athletes. Similarly, there are quite a few football academies where we work with the team at a group level, but at the same time, with a few of the footballers, we work at an individual level. So it's a combination, and we've been fortunate that we've been working with fairly large marquee academies who understand the importance of mental conditioning. I mean, someone like Abhinav Bindra, he himself worked with a sports psychologist, and he is told there have been stories about him. So it's great to kind of then be a part of his program and kind of share his vision, and we are able to distribute it amongst all the athletes that he works with. So it's a combination. We work with quite a few individual athletes across diverse sports, like a pentathlete, a taekwondo player, and to our the common and more popular sports like cricket, football, tennis, badminton. So it's a combination.
And what's like the common thing that when you said you study the market and then you enter this, now what do you see among, while you're now, directly working with psychologists and also working with the athletes, what's the buzz like? What are the most common, probably say, pointers that they come up with or they struggle with, that the psychologists also have to, like, okay, push themselves to kind of help these athletes out?
So I think the biggest issue was access to a sports psychologist. While an athlete, a 14-year-old athlete, say in a small town like Trichy or Nasik or Dehradun, they may have heard about a sports psychologist, but how do they reach out? Right. So, what Nut Sports, what we have done is we have kind of brought the entire community of sports psychologists together. And even for an academy, say an academy as Abhinav Bindra's academy has more than 100 athletes. Now, for 100 athletes, you need at least a team of 25 to 30 sports psychologists. What the advantage Nut Sports has is that Abhinav Bindra's foundation has to only reach out to us,
Right.
right? And then we ensure that the entire program is put in place. This is what was missing. This is what I realized was missing, because most psychologists were operating as freelancers. So accessibility to psychologists was difficult. Developing a structured program was difficult. So what we have done is we have, I can say that we've probably bridged the gap between these two areas.
And for individual athletes out there who are not part of academies or organizations that help them out, how does one approach Nut Sports?
So, in most cases, it's word of mouth, it's through our social media. We actively go out and reach through whatever medium possible, such as even today's chat. And that then they reach out to us. And then we look at the profile of the athlete, the age, the sport that they play, the level that they play at, whether they are at an elite level or at a intermediate level or a beginner level. We decide on the right sports psychologist. So that's our expertise, where we bring in the right support system for the concerned athlete.
Right. And now, can you take us through the process of what happens? Like, you give us a glimpse right now of, when the athlete comes to you, kind of do a profiling of the athlete. But can you probably take us through what happens once the athlete approaches, everything is set, and the program has started? Can you, like, take us through that?
So, in fact, I'll like to go one step behind, and once the athlete reaches out to us, or once an academy also reaches out to us, what we always introduce is a free orientation session, because typically the awareness and understanding of mental conditioning sports psychology is still in its early days. So if I ask, and I'm sure I may be probably right, if I ask 10 kids, tell us what is sports psychology, what is mental conditioning, I may get 10 different answers, out of which maybe 7 or 8 are incorrect. So what we try and do is we have an orientation where we tell the athlete and the parent and the coaches what is sports psychology, what is mental conditioning, what are the areas that we will work on, how will it help the athlete. So that's the first step. Once that is done, the second step is the introduction, where the athlete is introduced to his or her sports psychologist. After that, there's a detailed scientific assessment. We have an assessment tool that we follow, a psychometric test and various other procedures that we do. We do a detailed assessment of because our program is individualized. Each athlete is different. So the assessment gives a lot of insights. And then the sports psychologists, they work through one-on-one sessions with the athletes. We also ensure that at the end of every 6 sessions, we do a kind of an informal review with the athlete. Uh, Sports psychology is not a quick fix, it's a process, it takes time. That's something we always address during the orientation. We tell the parents that, hey, you go to the gym, you want to lose 10 kilos or you want to reduce your BMI by X percentage, you can track that. And it's easy to do that and you can do it quickly. Here, it's a process. You need to understand the entire process. So we always keep them in the loop. So every 6 sessions, we have this review call. And then every 12 sessions, we have a structured assessment. How was it? How was the athlete when he started or she started? And how are they now after 12 sessions? And then we continue. So that's the process.
And would you like to like highlight any? I mean, you can go back to some anecdotes in a way where you've seen athletes come in to you and approach you, or even players in the pool of academies. Have you seen a shift in their performance, and any stories like that that you would like to share?
So, I am always looking out for triggers beyond performance. Of course, there is an improvement in performance, and one must also be aware that it's just not the sports psychologist who's working. The athlete is also improving with his or her skills and technique. He's also getting more fitter, right? We look at the performance from the point of view of the mental properties that the athlete has worked on. But for us, the bigger thing is when a parent reaches out to us or when an athlete reaches out to us and say, hey, I feel I'm taking more responsibility in the house. Hey, I feel I'm taking more responsibility as a team player. I've become more compassionate to my team member. Even the parents sometimes come and say, hey, my child is now, earlier he used to be a little shy, now he's become an extrovert, he takes responsibility, he does things. So these are triggers, because at the end of the day, CG, you must remember that we are not just focusing on performance. We are not from competition to competition. We are developing the athlete's mental skills so that he or she can face any challenge that life throws at them. It's not just on the field, but it's off the field.
Yep.
So that's for me something that is really, really satisfying.
Now, there's often a chat and conversation around high performance, right? It's been these two words have been highly thrown at everything, at every chat and every conversation, and you want high performance and all of those things. How much of do you think, for high performance level, whatever the athletes go through, the mental psyche of an athlete that needs to be really top notch to actually give you a high performance? So how does how I'm sure it goes hand in hand. If you can just elaborate on that.
Someone like Djokovic, right? I mean, his mental strength is incredible. I mean, he's probably the most resilient. He and Nadal and even Federer, but they're the most resilient tennis players. And he says, and that's something that is also there on our website. He says that in the top 100 tennis players, physically they're all the same. It's only that little bit of mental strength that helps them play that pressure point. The top five guys play that pressure situation much better. So as you go higher up, it's all mental, right? So as you are in the age group, it's both, because you're developing also physically. But as you grow higher up, and when you reach the pinnacle, it's all, at the end of the day, it's down to your mind. And if an athlete has really gone through the mental training process from the beginning, then that becomes a way of life for an athlete. So yeah.
While I ask my next question, probably you can take a sip of your coffee as well. You know, coming to the point of the fact that there's so much, yes, there's still a lot to be done, probably in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, or conversations around different kind of sports about mental psyche and mental health. Why sports psychology, and how do you define and describe to a layperson of the importance of what you're doing?
So, this comes again from stories from athletes who have done well. And I don't know whether it was because I've been in the field, but in the last 1 year, you hear, for example, the England's women's football team, they work with a sports psychologist. And they were one of the pioneers in the AC Milan was one of the pioneers when it came to the men's football setup with a mental coach. But the English women's football team was also, I don't know whether they worked during this World Cup, but I'm sure they did because for them it's an integral part of their training program. So these are the stories that have started reaching out to smaller towns, tier two, tier three towns, and word of mouth. Right? I mean, you see an athlete working with a sports psychologist, and his or her peers start seeing the difference, and that's when they realize. Even today, whenever we get on a call with parents and kids, it's good to hear the parents say that, hey, I wanted my daughter to work with a sports psychologist, but I didn't know how and where and with whom, right? Because some of them have also had bad experiences because they have worked with unqualified sports psychologists. A lot of them call themselves mental coaches. They're not sports psychologists. They work, and it does. I mean, they are great motivators. They could be brilliant motivators, and they should play that role and complement that role as a motivator. But you cannot get into the depths of sports psychology, and those are some of the challenges we face, and we have to tell the parents and the kids that's the difference, and that's how we need to work.
Now, I know this is like a topic probably, nobody has an answer to, and because fans are a group of people that you cannot probably control, nobody does. But the reason I'm coming back to circling back when the whole Delhi Ali issue came up, right, when he opened up, the reason why I was thinking to myself, and I wanted to go on a series of saying that, okay, now you are feeling sorry about him for him, because he said the amount of trash he had to go through. He was down with his performance and stuff. Oh, now suddenly we know the reasons, so we're like feeling sorry for him and empathy and stuff. But that's why I just said we're all hypocrite fans, who just are waiting. Or even Virat Kohli came out and said, or any of these athletes
Yeah,
have come out
yeah,
and said, the
yeah.
wrestlers that you've mentioned. How do you think can you educate the fans? Is there a point? Because I've also we've exposed so many documentaries, right, which goes in depth, and I've been currently watching the Wrexham, and one of the episodes where
Yeah.
their first team goalkeeper had an injury, and the second one,
Yes.
I forget his name, but he came up and he had like a 5-0 to 5 all and 6-5 they
I
won,
remember
but
that. Yeah,
it
yeah.
was a trash talk around, right? And he himself talking, you can hear him say. So how do you kind of go about that? Is there any way that you think,
So it's a reality,
Yeah,
Siju. I mean, that's a reality we all have to face. It's going to be there.
yeah,
We need to just face it. Awareness is increasing, so that fan base, which is into trolling or which really kind of jumps on their player when they are down in the dumps instead of really lifting him or her up, they will be there.
yeah,
That's human psyche, that's
yeah,
human nature. We can't do anything about it. We can't control them. We
yeah,
can't control their behavior. So we need to adapt ourselves, right? And it's great when people talk about it because there are examples, right? The moment you see examples, you see stories. Half the job is done. I mean, you can relate to it. You can say, "Oh, this guy went through this, so there's nothing new that I'm going through." So yeah, so it's we need to accept the reality and then
yeah.
move on. Yeah.
Is there a specific program for coaches? Because from across, because that's the first person that a player and athlete looks up to, right? In many sectors, in many various aspects, because he or she does wrong, and that's what the player adapts to, and almost ends up being like a teacher or a parent on the field. So, is there a program, vast program for the coaches, especially, and how do you kind of go about that?
Yes, we do have a program for coaches because the coaches and even the sport parent, these two play a very, very important role, especially for a child in the age group of 10 to 16. And globally, statistics, these are US studies, which has, and I'm sure the figures are not very different in India or any other country. They have said that 3 out of 4 kids quit sport by the age of 13 or 14. The reason is the pressure that the parents and the coaches put on them. Their heart may be in the right place, they may have the right intentions, but they handle it poorly. So we do have a program for coaches, and we also have a program for sport parents to help them understand what is the role that they need to play. I mean, the coach's role and the parent's role is also that of a mentor. They also play a very important part in the mental makeup of the athlete. So they need to work as a team along with their sports nutritionist, along with the technical coach, along with the sports psychologist. So our programs basically take the coaches and the parents through various modules where we help them understand what is it that the athlete is going through emotionally, mentally during the age group of 10 to 15, 16, right? Because that is when a coach or a parent's impact and the reaction that an athlete throws out is can be really volatile, right? So we help them understand, and we have really seen some great insights coming in from parents and coaches saying that, hey, I thought what I was doing was for the benefit of the athlete. I didn't realize that they would react this way, right? So at the end of the day, we have to remember that everybody is a part of the entire ecosystem, with the athlete being right at the center, right?
Right.
So if one element goes in a different direction, it can just pull the athlete down. So
Yeah. Now, coming to the point of when I was going to the website, I found two quirky short forms which you kind of have formed. One is the ASAP and one is the PEP. Now, ASAP stands for Athlete Sport Aptitude Profiling, while PEP stands for Performance Enhancement Program. If you can just probably take us through this.
yeah. So ASAP is essentially our assessment tool, right? And which I mentioned earlier, we do a detailed psychometric assessment. And PEP, which is a peak performance enhancement program, is our overall program. I like to give acronyms because I believe acronyms stay well with the athletes. So ASAP is a very commonly used word, especially among young kids, and PEP has a positive connotation because athletes, I can tell you from the experience of having interacted, they are under a lot of stress. I mean, stress not just of performing on the field of play, but also academic pressure, societal pressure, so many other things going around them. It's not an easy life. I mean, it's fun to be young and playing, but it's not an easy life. So we've always tried to keep sports psychology as a fun element, and it is fun because you're just working on certain things. You're not getting into the serious domain. So that's why PEP was something that came up.
Now, what's ahead for Nut Sports and what's coming up? If there's anything that you want to share that we all look forward to, what is it?
So, technology is something that we are really working on. While our core model is working one on one with the athletes and also group sessions, we are launching an app shortly. The app has been developed by the team of sports psychologists. There is a bit of content on it, but the app will allow an athlete sitting anywhere in the country to reach out to a sports psychologist and speak and consult with a sports psychologist in the language that they are comfortable with. So, as I mentioned, currently in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns, from where the talent is coming, look at any sport. I
Yeah.
mean, you look at football, you have, the talent that is coming from Northeast. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Hockey, talent coming from Northeast and Odisha and other places. But how do these kids reach out? So we are launching an app shortly, keeping it simple. Just it'll help the athlete to reach out. Second is we are moving into the area of neurosciences, and we have partnered with a Singapore-based company who have a wearable product where we track the EEG, the brain signals and the muscle signals, uh, with the focus on peak performance, to see whether the athlete is using the right muscle, whether the athlete is paying attention and is relaxed while performing a task, while being under pressure. Because the way we sit, the way we stand, our posture, we compensate, we adjust, right? And athletes compensate a lot, and because of certain niggles and they compensate, it leads to injury in the long term, and they don't realize that this device of ours will help that. Our focus is going to be on injury management. Our focus is going to be on improving the athletes attention, relaxation while performing a task, and using of the right muscles. So that's something that we've partnered with. We have done pilots with a lot of athletes across sports, and now we have taken this to academies, and we've already started working with a lot of academies.
Great. I think that was a good insight into what you are doing in Nut Sports, and I wish you nothing but the best. And hopefully, this grows uh, across country. I mean, across the country, because I think this is the need of the hour. I think we'll keep talking about this. At least that awareness that you're mentioning as a first step. So, thank you so much for taking time out.
Absolute pleasure.
And yeah, lovely to have got to know you and got to know more about Nut Sports. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Iju. Thanks, pleasure.
To all the lovely listeners, this is me signing off. Hope you had an insightful conversation. You can reach out to Amit Gadkari and Nut Sports. He's quite active on LinkedIn. Do that and all their social media accounts. If you know of athletes who want to reach out, or if you're an athlete listening to this, please do so. This is me, Siju, signing off from the Totally Indian Football Show. We are a podcast available on all the leading audio platforms. Thank you so much.